Entitled Rich Girl Falsely Accused Me of Academic Dishonesty and Got My College Scholarship Revoked. So I investigated her family's business and found evidence of tax evasion that sent her dad to prison. I am Matilda, 22F, and I need to get this off my chest because what happened to me still keeps me up at night. This whole situation started 2 years ago when I was a sophomore in college. I come from a working-class family. My dad works at a factory and my mom cleans houses for rich people in our town. We never had much money, but my parents always made sure I had what I needed for school. I got into a decent state university on a partial academic scholarship and worked nights at a pizza place to cover my other expenses. My roommate assignment that year was Victoria, 21F. She came from serious money. Her dad owned several construction companies and her mom did something in real estate. Victoria drove a brand new BMW that cost more than my parents made in 2 years combined. Her closet was filled with designer clothes and handbags that I had only seen in magazines. At first, Victoria seemed nice enough. She would sometimes buy expensive coffee for both of us or order pizza for the room when I was working late shifts. She never made me feel bad about my financial situation directly, but there were always these small comments. She would suggest restaurants that I obviously could not afford or talk about spring break trips to Europe like everyone could just drop $3,000 on a vacation. The real trouble started in October of our sophomore year. We both took an advanced economics class that was required for our majors. The professor was known for being tough and the exams were worth 70% of our final grade. I studied constantly for weeks leading up to the midterm. Victoria barely opened her textbook. The night before the exam, Victoria was panicking. She asked if she could look at my study notes. I said yes because I thought she just wanted to review some concepts. I went to bed around midnight and left my notebook on my desk. When I woke up the next morning, Victoria was already dressed and ready to leave for the exam. She seemed much more confident than she had been the night before. During the test, I noticed she kept looking at a small piece of paper in her palm, but I did not think much of it at the time. 2 weeks later, our professor called me into his office. He said there were some concerns about academic dishonesty on the midterm exam. Apparently, Victoria had been caught with a cheat sheet that contained information directly copied from my study notes. The professor had security footage showing her writing on a small piece of paper at her desk the morning of the exam. Victoria had told the professor that I gave her the answers and that we planned the whole thing together. She said I was struggling financially and she had paid me to help her cheat. The professor found this story believable because Victoria came from a wealthy family and I worked multiple jobs to pay for school. I tried to explain what actually happened. I showed the professor my original notebook with all my handwriting and explained that Victoria had only asked to borrow my notes to study. But Victoria had already given a detailed statement about how I approached her with the cheating scheme. She even provided fake text messages that she claimed were our planning conversations. The Academic Integrity Committee met the following week. Victoria showed up with her parents and a lawyer. I came alone because my parents could not take time off work and we definitely could not afford legal representation. The committee reviewed all the evidence and decided that both Victoria and I would receive failing grades for the course and be placed on academic probation. But that was not the worst part. 3 days after the committee meeting, I received a letter from the financial aid office. My academic scholarship was being revoked due to the academic dishonesty violation. Without that scholarship money, I could not afford to continue at the university. I went to Victoria and begged her to tell the truth. I explained that losing my scholarship meant I would have to drop out of school. Victoria looked at me and said that she was sorry things worked out this way, but she had to protect her own future. She said her family had already made donations to the university to help with her situation and there was nothing she could do to change what happened. I spent the next week trying to appeal the financial aid decision. I met with advisors and administrators, but everyone said the academic integrity violation made it impossible to restore my scholarship. The best they could offer was student loans, but the interest rates were so high that I would be paying them back for decades. During this time, Victoria acted like nothing had happened. She continued going to parties and posting pictures of herself at expensive restaurants on social media. She even started dating the president of the business fraternity and would bring him back to our dorm room late at night. I had to withdraw from the university at the end of that semester. My parents were devastated. They had worked extra shifts and saved every penny to help me get through college. My mom cried when I told her what happened. My dad just sat quietly at the kitchen table and stared at his hands. I moved back home and got a job at the grocery store where I had worked during high school. The manager felt bad for me and let me work full-time hours. I was making barely above minimum wage, but it was better than nothing. For months, I watched Victoria's social media posts from home. She was thriving at school. She joined a sorority and was dating the same wealthy guy. Her grades seemed fine and she was on track to graduate on time. Meanwhile, I was scanning barcodes and bagging groceries while trying to figure out if I could ever afford to go back to school. The thing that really bothered me was how easily Victoria had lied about everything. She never showed any guilt or remorse. She protected herself and her future by destroying mine, and she seemed perfectly fine with that decision. I kept thinking there had to be some way to prove what really happened, but Victoria had been so careful with her fake evidence. She had deleted our real text messages and created new ones that supported her story. She had her lawyer and her parents backing up her version of events. I had nothing except my word, and that had not been enough. One day in March, about 4 months after I had left school, my mom came home from work with an interesting story. She cleans houses for several wealthy families in town, including the Hendersons who live in the same neighborhood as Victoria's family. Mrs. Henderson had been gossiping with my mom about local news and mentioned that Victoria's dad was being investigated by the IRS for some kind of tax problems. My mom did not think much of it at the time, but something about this information stuck with me. I started doing research online about Victoria's family business. Her dad's construction company had contracts with the city and county governments. I found records of these contracts on public websites and noticed some things that seemed odd. The company had been winning a lot of government contracts over the past few years, often with bids that were just barely lower than their competitors. They also had several subsidiary companies with different names but the same business address. Some of these subsidiaries were listed as minority-owned or women-owned businesses, but when I looked up the ownership records, they all seemed to trace back to Victoria's family. I am not an expert on government contracting rules, but I knew there were special programs to help minority-owned and women-owned businesses get contracts. If Victoria's family was using fake companies to qualify for these programs while still controlling all the work, that seemed like fraud. I spent weeks researching everything I could find about Victoria's family businesses. I made copies of public records and organized them into folders. I was not sure what I was going to do with this information, but it felt good to finally be taking some kind of action. Then in April, I got lucky. Victoria's dad was speaking at a Chamber of Commerce meeting that was open to the public. I decided to attend and see if I could learn anything useful. During his presentation, he talked about how his company had grown so much because they had been able to take advantage of various government programs designed to help small and disadvantaged businesses. After the meeting, I overheard him talking to other business owners. He was bragging about how easy it was to set up shell companies and qualify for minority business contracts. He mentioned specific strategies and even joked about how the government officials never bothered to verify ownership claims properly. I had brought a small recording device with me, the kind students use to record lectures. I managed to capture most of his conversation without anyone noticing. When I got home and listened to the recording, I realized I had evidence of him admitting to defrauding government contracting programs. I was not sure what to do with this information at first. Then I remembered that my cousin Derek works for the state tax department. He had gotten his job there right after college and was always talking about how much he enjoyed investigating tax fraud cases. I called Derek and told him I had some information about possible tax fraud. I did not mention my personal history with Victoria or explain why I was investigating her family. I just said I had stumbled across some suspicious business practices and wanted to report them properly. Derek agreed to meet with me the following weekend. I brought all my research and played him the recording from the Chamber of Commerce meeting. Derek listened to everything carefully and asked a lot of detailed questions about where I had found the information and how I had obtained the recording. After reviewing everything, Derek said there was definitely enough evidence to warrant an investigation. He explained that government contract fraud was a serious federal crime and that the recording of Victoria's dad bragging about his schemes would be very valuable to investigators. Derek told me he would forward all the information to the appropriate federal agencies through official channels. He said I should not expect to hear anything for several months because these investigations take a long time, but that I had provided a good starting point for their work. I went back to my job at the grocery store and tried to focus on my day-to-day life. Part of me wondered if anything would actually come from my report, but at least I had done something instead of just accepting what happened to me. Update 1: I cannot believe what has happened since my last post. The federal investigation I mentioned actually moved much faster than anyone expected. About 6 weeks after I submitted my information, Derek called me with an update. He said the FBI had opened a formal investigation into Victoria's family business and that they were very interested in the recording I had provided. Apparently, the schemes Victoria's dad had described were more extensive than what I had discovered on my own. The investigators had found evidence that Victoria's family had been running fraudulent government contracting schemes for over 8 years. They had created more than a dozen fake companies and had stolen millions of dollars in contracts that should have gone to legitimate minority-owned and women-owned businesses. But the really shocking part came when Derek told me they had also found evidence of tax evasion. Victoria's family had been hiding income in offshore accounts and had not paid proper taxes on their government contract earnings for years. 2 weeks ago, everything exploded. Federal agents raided Victoria's family home and her dad's business offices. They seized computers, financial records, and boxes of documents. The local newspaper covered the story and it was all over social media. I saw the news coverage online and felt this strange mix of satisfaction and disbelief. Victoria's perfect world was finally falling apart, but it felt surreal to watch it happen. The best part came 3 days after the raid. Victoria called me out of nowhere. I had not heard from her since the day she refused to tell the truth about the cheating incident. Her voice sounded completely different from how I remembered it. She was crying and begging me to help her. Victoria said she knew I was the one who had reported her family to the authorities. She claimed she had figured it out because I was the only person who had any reason to hurt them. She said her dad was facing serious criminal charges and that their family assets had been frozen by the court. Then Victoria offered to make a deal with me. She said she would contact the university and admit that she had lied about the cheating incident. She promised to tell the Academic Integrity Committee the truth about what really happened and to get my scholarship restored. In exchange, she wanted me to contact the investigators and tell them I had made a mistake in my report. I told Victoria I would think about it and call her back. Honestly, part of me was tempted by her offer. Getting my scholarship back would mean I could return to school and finish my degree. But another part of me knew that if I helped Victoria now, her family would just continue their fraudulent business practices and steal from programs meant to help legitimate small businesses. I decided to talk to Derek about the situation before making any decisions. Derek told me that the federal investigation was based on much more evidence than just my initial report. Even if I tried to recant my statement, it would not stop the prosecution because investigators had found extensive additional proof of the crimes. Derek also explained something interesting about how these investigations work. He said that victims of the crimes Victoria's family committed could potentially recover some of their losses through restitution payments. This meant that the minority-owned and women-owned businesses that had lost contracts due to the fraud might get compensated. After talking with Derek, I realized that Victoria's offer was not just about helping me. She was trying to save her family from serious criminal consequences by getting me to undermine the federal case. Even if I wanted my scholarship back, I could not justify helping people who had stolen millions of dollars from programs designed to help disadvantaged business owners. I called Victoria back and told her I would not help her family avoid prosecution. I explained that what they had done was wrong and that they needed to face consequences for their actions. Victoria started screaming at me and accused me of being vindictive and petty. She said I was destroying innocent people's lives just because I was jealous of her wealth. The conversation ended with Victoria threatening to sue me for defamation and harassment. She said her family still had enough resources to make my life difficult and that I would regret crossing them. 2 days later, I received a call from someone at my old university. It was a dean from the financial aid office who said they had received new information about my academic integrity case. Apparently, Victoria had contacted them and admitted that she had lied about me helping her cheat on the economics exam. The dean explained that the university was reopening my case and that they wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss reinstating my scholarship. Victoria had provided a written statement confessing that she had acted alone and that I had no knowledge of her cheating scheme. I was shocked that Victoria had actually followed through on her promise, especially after our hostile phone conversation. Later, Derek explained that Victoria's lawyer had probably advised her to make amends with people she had wronged in the past. Cooperating with victims and showing remorse can sometimes help defendants get more lenient sentences in federal criminal cases. The meeting with the university went well. They officially cleared my record of the academic integrity violation and restored my full scholarship. I was even eligible for additional financial aid to help with living expenses since I had been out of school for almost a year. The dean apologized for not investigating my original claims more thoroughly. She said the committee had been influenced by Victoria's detailed fake evidence and her family's reputation in the community. She admitted that they should have been more skeptical of Victoria's accusations, especially given the financial incentive she had to lie. I am planning to re-enroll for the fall semester. It will be strange going back to school after working at the grocery store for almost a year, but I am excited to finish my degree. The university even offered to let me take some summer courses to help me catch up with my original graduation timeline. Meanwhile, the federal case against Victoria's family is moving forward. Derek said the trial probably will not happen for another year because these complex fraud cases take a long time to prepare. But he expects that Victoria's dad will face serious prison time if he is convicted. Victoria has not contacted me again since she provided her confession to the university. I heard from other students that she had to drop out of school because her family could no longer afford tuition. Her dad's assets are still frozen and their house is apparently going up for sale to pay legal fees. I know some people might think I went too far by reporting Victoria's family to the authorities. But they were stealing money from programs designed to help disadvantaged business owners, and Victoria had already proven she was willing to destroy other people's lives to protect herself. Update 2: The situation with Victoria and her family has gotten much more complicated than I expected. The federal case went to trial last month and the results were devastating for them. Victoria's dad was convicted on 12 counts of government contract fraud and 4 counts of tax evasion. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay back over $4 million in restitution to the government programs he had defrauded. Victoria's mom was also charged as a co-conspirator because several of the fake companies had been registered in her name. She pleaded guilty to lesser charges and received 2 years of probation along with community service requirements. The family lost everything. Their house, cars, and business assets were all seized to pay the restitution and legal fees. Victoria's college fund and trust accounts were also frozen and liquidated as part of the judgment. But the most shocking development happened 3 weeks ago. Victoria showed up at my apartment completely unexpected. I was coming home from my evening classes when I found her sitting on the steps outside my building. She looked terrible. Her clothes were wrinkled and dirty, and she had lost a lot of weight. She was crying and could barely speak coherently. Victoria told me she had been living in her car for the past month. After her family lost their house, she had no place to go and no money to rent an apartment. She had dropped out of school and was working at a fast food restaurant, but her wages were barely enough to pay for gas and food. She begged me to let her stay in my apartment for just a few nights until she could figure out another solution. Victoria said she had nowhere else to turn and that she was sleeping in parking lots because she was afraid to stay in one place too long. I did not know what to do. Part of me remembered how Victoria had destroyed my life with her lies and felt like she deserved whatever happened to her. But seeing her in such a desperate state made me uncomfortable. She looked genuinely terrified and exhausted. I told Victoria she could sleep on my couch for 1 week, but that she would need to find another arrangement after that. I made it clear that this was temporary help and did not mean I forgave her for what she had done to me. Having Victoria in my apartment was extremely awkward. She spent most of the time sleeping or staring at the television. She barely ate anything and rarely spoke unless I asked her direct questions. It was like she had completely shut down emotionally. On her 3rd night staying with me, Victoria finally started talking about what had happened to her family. She explained that her dad had been running the fraudulent business schemes for years, but that she had never known the details of his illegal activities. Victoria said her dad had always been controlling and demanding. He expected perfect grades, perfect behavior, and perfect social connections from her. When she started struggling in college, she was terrified to tell him about her academic problems because he would have been furious. That was when Victoria admitted something that completely shocked me. She said the cheating incident had actually been her dad's idea. When she called home panicking about the economics exam, her dad had told her to do whatever it took to maintain her GPA. He suggested she should find a way to get answers from a smart classmate and said he did not care how she accomplished it. Victoria said her dad had coached her on exactly what to say to the Academic Integrity Committee. He told her to blame me for initiating the cheating scheme because it would be more believable than admitting she had acted alone. Her dad even helped her create the fake text messages that she used as evidence against me. This revelation made me incredibly angry. I had always assumed Victoria was just a selfish person who threw me under the bus to save herself. Learning that her dad had actually orchestrated the entire cover-up story made the betrayal feel even worse. But Victoria also told me something that explained her behavior during those months after the cheating incident. She said her dad had threatened to cut off her college funding and kick her out of the house if she ever admitted the truth about what happened. He told her that protecting the family reputation was more important than anything else. Victoria said she had wanted to come forward and tell the truth several times, but she was too scared of her dad's reaction. She knew that admitting she had lied would destroy her relationship with her family and her financial security. After hearing this explanation, I started to understand Victoria's actions differently. She was still responsible for the choice to lie about me, but her dad had manipulated her into that decision through threats and coercion. During her week at my apartment, Victoria also revealed more details about her family's criminal activities. She said her dad had been bragging about outsmarting government officials for years. He treated the fraudulent contracting schemes like a game and enjoyed feeling superior to the bureaucrats who were supposed to oversee the programs. Victoria's mom had known about the illegal activities but had been too afraid to challenge her husband. Victoria described her mom as someone who just went along with whatever her dad decided because she was financially dependent on him and scared of his temper. The family had been living beyond their means for years, using the stolen government contract money to pay for their expensive lifestyle. Victoria's dad had convinced everyone that his business was incredibly successful, but most of their wealth had come from fraudulent activities. By the end of the week, Victoria had found a room to rent in a house with several other people. It was not a great situation, but it was better than sleeping in her car. She thanked me for helping her and promised she would pay me back somehow for the groceries she had eaten. Before Victoria left, she asked if I could ever forgive her for what she had done to me. I told her honestly that I was not ready to forgive her yet, but that I was glad she had finally told the truth about the cheating incident. Victoria nodded and said she understood why I still resented her. She said she hoped that someday she could find a way to make up for the damage she had caused, but that she knew it might take years to rebuild any trust between us. After Victoria moved out, I felt conflicted about everything I had learned. On one hand, understanding the pressure she had been under from her dad made her actions seem less purely selfish. On the other hand, she had still chosen to destroy my life to protect herself, regardless of her motivations. I decided to focus on my own future instead of dwelling on the past. I am doing well in my classes and should graduate on schedule next year. The scholarship money has been enough to cover all my expenses, and I even have some left over to help my parents with their bills. The federal prosecutors have been in touch with me occasionally for updates on the case, but most of the legal proceedings are finished now. Victoria's dad started his prison sentence last month, and the restitution payments are being distributed to the victims of his fraud schemes. Update 3: This will be my final update about the Victoria situation. Some major things have happened that I think people following this story should know about. First, Victoria's dad died in federal prison 2 months ago. According to the news reports, he had a heart attack during his second month of incarceration. Victoria called me when it happened because she said she had no one else to talk to about it. Victoria told me she had mixed feelings about her dad's death. On one hand, she was sad because he was still her father despite everything he had done. On the other hand, she felt relieved that she would never have to deal with his manipulation and control again. The funeral was small because most people in their community had turned against the family after the fraud conviction. Victoria's mom did not attend the service because she was still angry about the divorce and wanted nothing to do with the family name. Victoria inherited some of her dad's remaining assets, but it was not much after all the restitution payments and legal fees. She received about $15,000 and some personal items that the government had not seized. What Victoria did with that inheritance money surprised me completely. Instead of using it to improve her living situation or go back to school, she contacted several of the minority-owned businesses that her dad had cheated out of government contracts. She split the money between 5 different companies and sent them checks along with personal apology letters. Victoria told me she knew $15,000 could not make up for the millions her dad had stolen, but she wanted to do something meaningful with the money instead of just spending it on herself. She said it felt wrong to benefit from her dad's criminal activities even after his death. Around the same time, Victoria made another decision that shocked everyone who knew about our history. She started volunteering at a non-profit organization that helps low-income students navigate college financial aid applications. She was spending 20 hours a week helping other students avoid the kind of problems I had faced. The non-profit director contacted me because Victoria had listed me as a reference on her volunteer application. The director wanted to verify that Victoria was genuinely committed to helping students and not just trying to make herself look good for some other purpose. I told the director about our complicated history but also mentioned that Victoria seemed to have changed significantly over the past year. I explained that she had been through serious personal consequences and appeared to be trying to make amends for her past actions. The director appreciated my honesty and decided to give Victoria a chance as a volunteer. She said the organization would monitor Victoria's work closely and that helping students who had been wronged by the system might actually be a good fit for someone with Victoria's background. Over the past few months, I have occasionally run into Victoria around town. She always says hello and asks how school is going, but we do not have long conversations. She seems much more humble and serious than she was during college. The entitled attitude she used to have is completely gone. Victoria has also been working full-time at a local bank while doing her volunteer work. She started as a teller but recently got promoted to a customer service position. Her supervisor apparently thinks she is very good at helping customers who are dealing with financial difficulties. Last month, Victoria told me she was planning to go back to school part-time to finish her degree. She wants to study social work and eventually get a job helping people navigate government assistance programs. She said her experience with her family's crimes had taught her how much damage can be done when people abuse systems designed to help others. I think Victoria's career choice is appropriate given everything that has happened. She understands better than most people how government programs can be manipulated and what the real-world consequences are when people commit fraud against these systems. As for my own situation, I graduated last month with my economics degree. I got a job at a non-profit that audits government spending and helps identify waste and fraud in public programs. It is not the highest paying position I could have taken, but the work feels meaningful and connects to everything I experienced with Victoria's family. My parents were incredibly proud at my graduation ceremony. They said they had never doubted I would finish school eventually, but they were amazed by how much I had grown during the process. My mom said dealing with the Victoria situation had taught me to stand up for myself in ways that would help me throughout my career. I have been thinking about whether I can truly forgive Victoria for what she did to me. The honest answer is that I am still working on it. I understand now that she was manipulated by her dad and was operating under serious pressure and threats. But she still made the choice to destroy my life to protect herself, and that choice caused real harm that took years to recover from. What I can say is that I no longer feel angry when I think about Victoria. Watching her lose everything and then work to rebuild her life with integrity has shown me that people can change when they face serious consequences for their actions. Victoria will never be my close friend, but I respect what she is trying to do with her life now. She is working to help other people instead of just focusing on her own success, and she has taken responsibility for her past actions in concrete ways rather than just apologizing with words. The situation taught me that sometimes getting justice requires patience and persistence. I could have just accepted what happened to me and moved on with my life, but I decided to investigate Victoria's family and report their crimes. That decision ultimately led to justice for many people, not just myself. I also learned that people can be both victims and perpetrators at the same time. Victoria was manipulated and controlled by her dad, but she also chose to lie about me when she could have found other solutions to her academic problems. Understanding her situation helps explain her actions, but it does not excuse the harm she caused. The whole experience has made me more interested in investigating white-collar crime and helping protect government programs from fraud. My new job lets me work on cases similar to Victoria's family situation, and I find the work both challenging and rewarding. I think this will be my last update unless something major happens in the future. Victoria and I have both moved on with our lives, and there is not much more to say about our relationship. We are two people who went through a complicated situation together and came out different on the other side. People have asked me if I think reporting Victoria's family was the right decision. My answer is that it was necessary regardless of my personal situation with Victoria. Her family was stealing millions of dollars from programs designed to help legitimate small businesses owned by women and minorities. That theft was harming real people and undermining important government initiatives. Getting my scholarship restored was a positive outcome for me personally, but the more important result was stopping ongoing criminal activity and helping compensate the victims of that activity. Sometimes doing the right thing benefits you personally, but that should not be the primary motivation for taking action against injustice.